We're making blueberry lemon scones that are golden on the outside and soft and tender on the inside. They're full of flavor with oat flour, lemon juice and zest, and blueberries. And they get a protein boost from Greek yogurt. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla, and if you love healthier recipes to our favorite foods, then you are in the right place. Now you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click the link that's in the video description below, and that will take you to the full recipe with all the details, including nutrition facts, ingredients and substitutions, and frequently asked questions. Now to make these really easy scones, we're going to start by mixing together our wet ingredients. And to make them extra tender and to have a protein boost, we're going to add 2/3 of a cup of some plain Greek yogurt and 2 tablespoons of milk. And I'll crack in 1 egg. And then I'm adding 1/4 cup of cane sugar. You could use any sugar you like. Now in addition to the cane sugar, I like to add a little bit of maple syrup because I think it helps to enhance the flavor. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice and about 2 tablespoons of lemon zest and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then we'll just whisk this together until it's well incorporated. And then we can set this aside. Next, we're going to mix together our dry ingredients. Now there's a variety of flour combinations that you can use, and I've included a table on the recipe card that includes their measurements that you can check out. I really like making these with a combination of oat flour and gluten-free flour because the oat flour brings in more flavor and nutrition, and then the gluten-free flour just helps give it that nice structure. So I'm going to add 1 1/3 cup of oat flour, and I just ground this from old-fashioned oats in my blender, and 2/3 of a cup of gluten-free flour. And then I have a combination of 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then we just want to mix these together really well in our bowl. Now there is a method of freezing the butter and then shredding it with a cheese shredder and then mixing it in, but I found that that was a really cumbersome to try and hold on to kind of the slippery butter and put it on the cheese shredder. And so I found that really what works the best is just taking the butter right out of the fridge and just chopping it up really small and then mixing it in by hand. So I have 1 stick of butter, which is 1/2 cup, and then I'm just going to start chopping it up with a knife into some nice thin pieces. I'll go through and chop it up even smaller, and I'll just dump it all in our bowl. Then you can use a pastry cutter to mash it all together, but I found that my hands actually work best. So I'll remove any jewelry, and I'll just come in and start squishing it all together. This is actually very satisfying. So I'm just feeling around for some big chunks of butter and then squishing them together in my fingers. And these will give you those little pockets and chunks of butter in the scones that is so delicious. And we just want to get to where it's nice and crumbly with some little clumps of butter. So that's perfect. Now we can pour in our wet mixture, and then I'm just going to use a nice stiff spatula and just mix it in. Because we don't want to overmix this because again, this is what helps give us those nice tender scones that are soft on the inside. And once all the flour is incorporated, you'll have this really nice fluffy sticky dough. Now we get to add the best part, which is the blueberries. Now you could use either fresh or frozen. I like using frozen because it does help keep the batter cold. So just dump those in, and then we're just going to lump all of our dough together in one big ball. And then on my cutting board, I'm just going to spread out a little more of my almond flour just to help it not stick. And then dump out the dough. And then we'll use our hands and just start flattening it out until a nice big round circle. And you can kind of disperse your blueberries a little more. You can throw a little more flour on your hands if you need to. And the less we handle it, the better, because that keeps our butter from melting. Now, if you're in a warmer climate and you can tell that your butter is starting to get a little bit soft, then you can just place this in the freezer for about 20 minutes before we cut it into our scone shapes. So now you want to take a nice sharp knife, and we're going to slice down the middle and slice it in half again, and then slice the 4s into halves. And having a nice sharp knife makes it really easy to slide through those blueberries. And then I have a cookie sheet that's lined with parchment paper. I'll just use my knife to go in and scoop up each triangle and place it on our sheet. Now these will spread just a little bit as they bake, so I want to make sure they have some space around them, about 1 inch all the way around. You're also free to add a few more blueberries if you think it needs it. Now this is optional, but to give them just a little bit of bling or sparkle on top and a little more sweetness, I'm going to sprinkle on some turbinado sugar. So I'm just going to take a little bit in my hand and just sprinkle it right on top. Well, these look gorgeous, and they're ready to go into a 400-degree oven for anywhere between about 20 to 22 minutes, or until they start to turn just a light golden brown around the top. And we're putting it at a little bit higher heat at 400 because we want them to get nice and toasted on the outside, but stay very soft on the inside. Well, here's a batch of scones that I baked earlier that I've allowed to cool completely, and they are so beautiful. I love how they have that nice golden color on the outside, but they are just soft on the inside. And as you can see, someone already sampled them for me. Now you could serve these as is, but I really like adding a little glaze on top because it is beautiful and tasty. Now you could just make a really simple one with some milk and some powdered sugar, but I find you get a lot more flavor by combining some Greek yogurt with maple syrup. And I will always add protein any way I can. So I'm just going to add 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt to a small bowl and 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And then I'll just whisk this together. You just keep whisking, and in less than a minute it will all come together. Now at this point, it's a little on the thick side and not quite drizzleable. So I'm going to add about 1/2 tablespoon more of some milk. And then we'll mix that in. And now we have a nice drizzle. So I'll just take my spoon and then just drizzle it right across the top of the scones. And you could certainly just cover them completely or just do them in these nice little stripes like I am. And I love how it drips down the sides. Now, if you could use more healthy inspiration on a regular basis, I invite you to join my email list. All you have to do is click on the link in the video description below, and that is the best way for us to stay connected. Well, this looks gorgeous and it is ready to sample. That is so delicious. That has the perfect scone pastry texture and so much flavor coming in from that oat flour. And I love the balance between the sweet blueberries and the tangy lemon. And the little Greek yogurt glaze over the top really enhances the lemon flavor, and the maple syrup makes it perfectly sweet. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today in my kitchen. I've included the link to this full recipe and it's in the video description below, and that will take you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I look forward to having you join me again in my kitchen.